Good morning, ladies. I'm thinking this is episode 6, but it might be episode 5. But welcome back either way. I'll need to write that down because I can't remember. So this may be just slightly longer than 10 minutes today because I have an addition and a correction from last time. So I have a unique language called Amy Speak, which my children understand, but they don't speak yet. They will someday. But up here, the words are totally appropriate, but when they come out, there's some disconnect. And so because I thought the correct word, I think I say the correct word, and that is not what happens a lot of the time. So last week, I pointed out that I didn't like the quinoa, although I called it quinoa. I don't know. Before we started, totally know what quinoa is. It just was one of those moments. And afterward, my daughter's like, "Did you mean quinoa?" And I'm like, "Oh, yes, I did." So there is no such thing as quinoa or whatever I called it. It's quinoa. It's Quinoa. And that's what I was referring to. And then also something that I left out, which is kind of important in our house. We love sugar. Sweeteners. So sugars and sweeteners. And I understand that a lot of you don't use sugar. That's okay. Have a lot of honey or molasses or some of the other substitutes for sugar that you need to have on hand. But obviously there are plenty of things you do need to sweeten in some way or another. And if fresh fruits, which are a great sweetener, are not available, and you have to use the dried fruit, you're going to lose a lot of that fruit juice or the flavor sometimes that would help you sweeten things. So consider that when you have your food storage, what you want to use with your flavorings. Now, honey, if it's stored correctly, it might crystallize, but you can always melt it down. And that is a superfood. It is a wonderful, wonderful thing to have in storage. But it does change the way you cook things. It's not quite the same as replacing things with sugar. You have to adjust things a little bit. Then on the sugar lasts forever. However, it will pick up flavors and tastes from other things. And it kind of can go a little bit, I don't know if stale is the word, but you're not going to pick that up in what you cook. You'll just smell it a little bit when you open the bucket. However, very important to keep that one in particular away from things that are going to flavor it other than the sugar that you want. Okay, on to today's thing. One more list. Probably do that one more time next week. This is kind of a miscellaneous list that I made up that we'll talk about. Hopefully we can cover some things that maybe you haven't thought of. So at the very top we have cleaning supplies. It's noted with COVID, cleaning supplies were in short demand. A lot of our product is not made in America. It comes from overseas, particularly China. So anytime our relationships with China are not great, which might be fine for the next few years, might not, who knows, that can definitely affect the cleaning supplies. And then obviously a pandemic where everybody wants the wipes and whatever else you have. So if you have your supply, or at least quite a bit of storage, that's something you're not going to worry about so much. Okay, so medicines and prescriptions. Now, prescriptions, obviously, a lot of those cannot be stored super long term, and a lot of them cannot be obtained for super long term, so you can only get so much at a time. You can talk to your doctor about it, see how he feels about letting you have a longer supply, but I'm not sure. I honestly can't tell you what the laws are or anything and how that would go. So that's something you're really going to have to work out on your own, but at least have your basic medicines on hand. Some herbs are great for remedies. If you want to have those on hand, that's great. Okay, laundry supplies. Now keep in mind, when you do get laundry supplies, to consider that there might not be electricity. I wanted, and I never have gotten, like a washboard. Oh, yeah, well, but I am really good at washing things out in the sink and tub if I had to do it that way. But, yeah, some of those old-fashioned washers and stuff would be great for the really super preppers. I don't have those myself. You'd have to just figure it out otherwise. Personal hygiene. Okay, so these are things like, the basics. The toothpaste, the toothbrushes, the mouthwashes, the deodorant. We're all going to become a really stinky people if a lot of us don't have a year's supply of that. I don't even want to think about it. It's like teaching junior high. Anyway, only living there. So maybe consider having that on hand. Feminine supplies, that's an obvious for whatever you might need. Male supplies too. If you have a beard and you want to maintain that in a certain way, you're going to probably have to have those supplies. Yes, use your imagination. Okay, a little bit of cash. Not a bad thing to have on hand. If the banks were ever frozen, the ATMs didn't work, obviously power supply could be a big deal on that. You would need to have a little bit of cash on hand. Also, what is this one? Can't read it backwards. Oh, gardening tools and supplies. So that's important, although in my opinion, you should not rely on gardening. I think it will be a great addition and bonus, but if we get to that point where we have to use the food that's in our basement, there's a whole lot of months in the year where you're not harvesting, can't harvest, depending on where you live. Even if you get things planted, you got to wait a while for them. Tell you a quick story. Did I tell you this one about the people that live behind my dad? I think I did. The Bosnians. Yeah. Who knows if we'll be able to garden. If it's a drought, there may not be water to garden. So, but still have these on hand, just in case. Hope for the best. Clothing. A year's supply of clothing. Now, this is really critical with kids, especially kids who are growing fast, little kids, babies. It's a great way to shop is to buy your 3-month-old, the 6 and 8 and 9-month-old clothes when they go on sale. Or, if you got a 6-month-old in December and the winter clothes go on sale, you can buy those 18-month clothes for next year. And yes, sometimes you run the risk of them not quite fitting at the right time, but it's still great to have on hand. Plus, Plus, it saves you some money if you shop that way. Okay, school supplies, something we don't often think about. It only took one time for one child, and I'm sure this has happened to a lot of you, where the kid says the night before, oh yeah, I have to have a poster, yada, 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 for the whatever, chain of life, whatever the assignment was, and I have to have it done by tomorrow. And you're running to the store at 10 o'clock at night to get poster board or whatever you don't have on hand for this project. Yes, one time, then I supplied the poster board and had it in stock, and the markers and the tape and whatever else we needed to get that done. Now, still there were sometimes we may have been short on 1 or 2 things, but if you have to send your kids to school without being able to go purchase their supplies because of whatever crises, if we even get lucky and still have school, then you're going to want that on hand. Okay, school supplies, first aid supplies. Okay, everybody should have first aid kit, and I would suggest multiple first aid kits. One that is appropriate to keep in your car, one that you have with your 72-hour kits, and that's something we will talk about at a future date, is those to-go bags that you need to grab right away and get out of the house. Obviously, some first aid kits in your home. Now, a well-rounded one is going to have just a little bit more than Neosporin and Band-Aids, and that's probably pretty critical. You may have to treat, say it's an earthquake, and you've got some deep gashes or some injuries, you may have to have a sling or a couple of those things that we don't really plan on, maybe an ankle brace. So consider those things, some things that you can do at home. Obviously, you want to get people seen for anything that's, requires much more than a Band-Aid. But yes, in the meantime, at least you can do a few things. And really, honestly, I really feel like one part of emergency preparedness is maybe getting certified in CPR. And I love CERT. At one point, many years ago, we went and did the CERT thing. I would love to do that again. Haven't done it yet. But it was kind of in the early beginning days of CERT. But it's really helpful for your own family. Now, yes, in an emergency, you will be called out away from your family to go help others. So consider that when you think about it. But to at least get certified in some first aid is a great thing to know and be prepared for when you have to administer that to others, especially your loved ones. Okay, I think we're to the last one. Canning supplies. I'm going to list one more thing besides canning supplies. And I may do it again next week, but it's something we don't think about sometimes. Well, actually, let's go with canning supplies first. Okay, so if you're going to garden, you want that food to last longer than just a season. So you're going to need to can it in some way, shape, or form. Preserve it. You probably going to want those on hand. Now, there was such a rush on canning supplies. There's only one company, and they do have the same name, or different names, but it's the same company who makes Ball and Kerr and the no-name brands. And they actually pulled all their orders this last fall. They were just overwhelmed, and they were so far behind. They canceled all the orders. And I don't know if you noticed if you're a canner, but it was really hard to come by jars and lids and rings. They were gone. So they pulled them all, and then they kept producing them. They're putting them back out on the market right about now, I think. But they were gearing up to have enough on hand to put out for this year. So that was something I've never seen in my lifetime. I mean, honestly, very few people, not enough people, haunt the halls of the little canning section in the grocery stores. But that's a great thing to have on hand. Okay. And then one thing I'm going to mention here that I may not later on is, and I'll just do those other two things next week. They were going to be part of next week anyway. But with your canning jars, it is a great way to store water. If you're going to store canning jars at your house, fill them. If they're empty, waiting for food to go in there, put water in them. It's a great way to kind of help keep them dust-free and clean. Just keep your old rings after you pop them off your bottles. Put them back on, screw a ring on top. Keeps the water clean, and you have instant water supply. So if you're going to take up that space, they're just going to sit there empty. Fill them with water. All right, sorry ladies, we did go a little bit over. Next week, 10 minutes. Also this week, I'm posting this a little early just because I'm not skilled enough yet to post it from my phone, and I'm not going to be around at 10 o'clock to do that today. So have a great day. Happy preparing. See you next week.